Hello everybody, Terry Carl Joy Edian here with Law 45, Forgive but Don't Be Sorry. This is another pretty powerful law. Some of these I think I just was not in the right place to receive the first time I read through the book, because I just feel like I'm surprised and amazed by each of these laws as we're nearing the end. This is the second to the last law, Law 45. And it carries on from what was talked about in the previous Law 44 about gratitude and how gratitude is helpful physiologically. It helps reprogram the system. And Dave Asprey of Game Changers from this series says that forgiving reprograms the nervous system so that you're no longer reacting to the past. Which makes sense. I'm sure you've heard something similar before. He says what we need to do is identify the stories that we're telling and find a way to be grateful for even the worst things that we've experienced. He talks about how there are two options. You have self-pity and you have gratitude. And you can choose your story. And a lot of times we're already choosing a story, and it may be self-pity, and it may or may not be true. In fact, Dave says most of the stories we tell are really not true, and really it's all about perspective anyway. So you can create your own story. I love the example he gives of someone cutting you off in traffic. It's funny, I just had this happen. Was it last week? It was very recent, like last week or a few days ago, where someone, I'm driving and I'm in the left lane and I'm already going over the speed limit significantly on the highway. But there's someone who's like right up against me and goes over into the right lane and then back over to the left lane right in front of me and puts the brakes on. Now I don't know if I don't know, but of course I'm creating the story, which is what he says we tend to do. We're in traffic, we think that person thinks they're better than me, or they think I'm driving too slowly, and I was even justifying it, like I'm already driving pretty quickly over the speed limit. How fast does he need to go? But I have no idea. But we are already creating our own story. He says, what if that person is rushing off to the hospital? And maybe I'll justify, no, he got off on that exit, that's not toward the hospital. But the point is, we don't know. We don't know exactly what's going on with that person. And even more importantly, we can decide, because we're not going to, hopefully, follow that person and knock on their window and ask them, what was that back there? I mean, some people do. Please don't do that. We're not, most of the time. So we can create whatever story we want. And he says that some people attempt forgiveness. A lot of times we'll attempt forgiveness. We'll go halfway. We'll say, well, this person cut me off, but I forgive them. But there's still that feeling of resentment. And that feeling of resentment is what digs inside us and messes up our system, messes up our nervous system. So he says, just create your own story. We don't know the difference. We don't know exactly what's going on, and it doesn't matter, but our feelings affect us. So in order to forgive this person, whatever this situation is, why not just use our imagination in a way that's more in favor of our nervous system, more in favor of us feeling good and being happy and effective throughout our day? So what if that person just got some really great news and can't wait to tell their family and is not really paying attention to what's going on the road and not aware of how they're affecting other people? It's just in a crazy, like, oh my gosh, I have to tell this great news. Whatever it takes, whatever story we need so that we can release, so that we can forgive. I thought that was neat. And Dave Asprey says, that's more important than having a thick skin. Having a thick skin is actually not useful, because he says, if you have a thick skin, that means you're still taking hits, you're blocking positive emotions from coming in, because a thick skin is blocking out everything. You're blocking positivity from going out, and it's energetically expensive to build and maintain that thick skin. So it's sapping you of your energy, it's blocking positivity, and you're still getting hit, even though you may not feel it as much. I thought that was pretty powerful. He says if you can find a way, anyway, creating that story, that imaginative story, to have gratitude and compassion with a person or a situation, then that experience, that behavior can pass right through you without costing any energy at all. This is very powerful stuff, the imagination and the thick skin advice. I really got a lot from this. And then he talks a little bit about Tim Ferriss, because he always interviews an expert. He says he asked some advice from Tim Ferriss, what's his top advice to people? And it was, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. We all have thoughts coursing through our minds all the time. We all have stories going through our minds. I will sometimes create elaborate conversations and stories in my head. That's how I know I have a good imagination. And a lot of the times, it doesn't happen the way I see it in my head. So why not use it for something that you do want to happen or that will make you feel better? He says that Tim says not to retreat into the story. And Dave says you can change that, tweak that to live in the world, if you want to put it in a positive way. Don't retreat into the story, live in the world. And he also references Tony Robbins, who reminds us that everything is impossible until somebody does it. Everything is impossible until somebody does it. Maybe you've heard stories. I've heard stories of Henry Ford, where he demanded a particular engine and he kept being told it can't be done, and he said, I don't care what it takes, make it happen. And I think it took quite some time, and then something happened and someone said, I know how to do it now. Same thing with getting to the moon. Couldn't be done. But President Kennedy was determined that it could be done, and it was done. Nothing is impossible everything is impossible until somebody does it, which also is nothing is impossible. The stories that are holding you back are the results of past traumas when your nervous system believed you were threatened. That's from, I think, Dave directly. The stories that are holding us back are from past traumas. Could be emotional, could be somewhat physical, but some kind of trauma that are stored within us, basically, because we store these emotions, these stories in our body oftentimes. And they're holding us back. Our past is holding us back. So that's why forgiveness is so powerful, amazing, because it's allowing us to release all of these built up things that don't even exist at the present. Here are some suggestions. Here are the tips at the end of the chapter that Dave gives. First, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? Ask yourself that. What's the worst thing that ever happened to you? And then think of one good thing that came from it. I know I personally have had a lot of tough experiences. One was leaving a career I'd been in that I was unhappy in. So it's pretty easy for me to see the good that came from it, because it's put me on an entirely different path, even though the process of leaving it was painful. 2, think of a limiting story you absolutely believe to be true about yourself and or about the world. Now this is pretty powerful, what he says next. Then imagine one thing that would make the story not true, even one time. There's even one possible way that story could not be true. And he says, if you can't find any way that story can't be true, keep digging. Excuse me. Ask friends for help if needed. Ask friends for help. Do whatever it takes to find the answer to your story, that it's not true. Because everything is possible, nothing is impossible. And finally, make a list of people or things that you are holding a grudge against. And forgive each one of those. He gives plenty of lines. Apparently he thinks we have a lot to forgive. And I believe a lot of people say this, that even if we think everything's fine, there are things that we can still release. There are always things that we can release and move forward with. So forgive. Use stories if you need to. Remember the title, Forgive But Don't Be Sorry. You don't need to forgive and feel like it's our fault, we don't need to feel bad, but we do need to release. We do need to release. If we need to reframe, create a story, whatever we need to do so that we can be free and live our best lives. So I'd love to know your experiences with this. Have you had that similar car story? Have you had a reframe story? Have you found a story to be completely not true and reframed it and turned it around? Or have you practiced this imagination practice? Or do you intend to practice this creative, imaginative, new story practice? I'd love to hear about that. And we have one more law for this next video, so I'll see you for this next one. For Law 46, I have done the other laws all through this playlist, so please check them out. If you're not already subscribed, click that subscribe button so you can catch all of these and the next book that we'll be approaching. And we'll see you next time. Much love and many blessings to you all. Bye now.